Hi everyone, welcome back to Gardening from Square One. And if you're new here, welcome. You hear that? The birds are chirping, lawns are turning green, plants are beginning to leaf out, and some are even blooming. Here in the warmer parts of the country, spring is definitely upon us, and it is the perfect time to either start transforming our gardens or thinking about it. We each have our unique plant combinations that bring us joy. In my garden, I prioritize rabbit and deer resistant plants, and the majority are drought tolerant and easy to care for. And while I do indulge in a few high maintenance choices, like roses, for example, just full transparency, I truly understand the benefits of keeping things simple. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the endless plant options and dream of a beautiful garden that requires minimal upkeep, you're in the right place. I compiled a fantastic list of great plants that not only bring beauty to your garden, but they also require little to no effort. They thrive with minimal attention, no repeated fertilization, pruning, or deadheading. These plants, for the most part, grow in most soils, and many of these plants are hardy down to zones 5 and 6. The first plant on my list is sedum. Now, these hardy succulents thrive on neglect and they come in many colors, growing from 8 inches in height to some varieties become about 2 feet in height. Just plant them in well draining soil in the full sun. In terms of water, they'll want to be watered when the soil dries out completely. Deadheading isn't necessary, but you could, of course, remove spent flowers for a little more of a tidy look. In terms of fertilization, not much at all. Just sprinkle a little balanced fertilizer in the spring, and these plants will do fine all season. The next plant on my list is yarrow. Now, yarrow is considered a low maintenance perennial for many reasons. First of all, it is highly drought resistant, making it an ideal choice for gardens in dry climates or for those looking just to conserve water. It can thrive in a variety of soil conditions, including poor soil, and it requires little to no pruning at all. You can cut back spent flowers if you desire a tidier look or to encourage new blooms, but this plant won't pose much of a challenge if you just leave it alone. It is generally resistant to pests and diseases, meaning less time will be spent dealing with infestation and treatments. And a bonus, its aromatic foliage tends to deter some insects, adding to its low maintenance appeal. The next plant on my list is Caryopteris, and it has blooms that come in shades of blue, purple, and pink. You will see these blooms from late summer all the way through the first frost in fall or whenever you receive that. It's also known as bluebeard and it wants to be grown in full sun and soil that drains well. Now, Caryopteris needs no fertilizer, but it can benefit from an application of a top dressing of organic compost annually, especially if you have unamended sandy soil that is potentially or definitely nutrient deficient. There is no need to deadhead your bluebeard for continuous blooms. Just prune the shrub in the spring when you see the healthy new growth that begins to appear, and that's about it. I sincerely appreciate you watching my videos. If you get value from anything I present, please consider clicking like, subscribe, and notifications. Moving on. The next plant is Russian sage. Now, this aromatic beauty loves to bask in the full sun and it can tolerate a lot of drought. I actually have one in my garden that isn't on any irrigation at all, and then the other set they are on irrigation. And to be perfectly honest, it's only been a year, but I really can't see much of a difference between the two. Russian sage only needs minimal pruning in late winter to keep it looking tidy, but leave the spent blooms for winter interest. Fertilization, not much at all. You can apply a general purpose fertilizer in the spring if you have poor soil, but that's about it. It's pretty easy peasy to care for. The next plant on my list, and if you want to talk about tough plants, it is Baptisia. This plant wants to grow in full sun to part sun. It has a very long taproot, and because of this, they can thrive with very little water once they're established. So you can just sit back and enjoy their stunning tall spikes of blooms. In terms of deadheading, I never deadheaded mine, but if you're inclined, you can cut back the spent blooms in late spring just to tidy up the plant. In terms of fertilization, it only requires a light dose of compost or slow release fertilizer each spring, and that's about it. Another easy peasy plant. The next plant on my list is Daylilies. Now, this plant is just bursting with blooms from late spring through the summer. One caveat is these plants are not deer resistant. However, they can flourish in a variety of soils. Just give them some sun, water them during dry spells. You don't even need to deadhead these plants because it's pretty self cleaning. However, if the plant does hold on to a bloom here or there is absolutely no need to pull out your pruners. You can just use the tips of your fingers to snip off those spent flowers. In terms of fertilization, if you have the non-reblooming types, you can just use a balanced fertilizer in the early spring. However, if you have the reblooming types, you may want to use a slow release fertilizer in the spring to keep those gorgeous blooms coming all season. The next plant on my list is Coneflower. Now, these resilient plants come in a gorgeous array of colors. They only need well drained soil and some watering during dry spells. In terms of fertilization, you can put a light application of a balanced fertilizer around the plants in early spring. Regular deadheading is not required, but it does encourage more blooms. However, many gardeners leave the spent flowers on because the seeds can help the birds. Most of the plants on this list are herbaceous perennials, so they have fleshy stalks that die back to the ground when it becomes cold. Although the daylilies, of course, you can get evergreen varieties. And there are a couple of woody shrubs, so the Caryopteris and Russian sage. The next plant is a shrub, and it is barberry. Now, this hardy, versatile plant is highly drought tolerant once established. It has deep root systems that allow the plant to access moisture in the soil, which makes them great for dry areas and low water gardens. Now, once established, they need very little watering. However, if you're having a prolonged drought, you want to go out maybe once a month and give it a deep watering to keep it healthy and alive, of course. Younger plants may need occasional watering until they are fully established. There's really no pruning required for this plant other than if you want to improve the shape or remove any dead branches, and you'll do that in late winter or early spring before your new growth begins. These plants are tolerant of poor soil. They do not require rich fertilizers. You can just throw a balanced fertilizer, slow release fertilizer around the plant in early spring if you want to boost the growth. But that's about it. Another easy plant. The next plant on my list is Nepeta, also known as catmint. Now, this aromatic perennial thrives in just about any soil. It is beneficial for pollinators, but all it needs is a sunny spot and occasional watering. In the late winter, early spring, you can go through and pretty indiscriminately trim back these plants to promote new growth. It rarely needs it, but a light feeding with the general purpose fertilizer in the spring could promote more blooms. The next plant on my list is easy peasy to grow, and it is Rudbeckia, also known as black-eyed Susan. Just plant them in full sun, make sure you water them during dry spells, and they will reward you with a riot of sunny gold blooms all season long. In terms of deadheading, you can extend the blooming by going in and pretty indiscriminately deadheading the blooms. However, it is not necessary. And in terms of fertilization, they require very little fertilization. In early spring, you can just throw a bit of compost around the plants, and that's enough to help boost the growth. That's about it. Like I said, easy peasy. Well, there you have it. A colorful selection of low maintenance perennials to enhance your garden. Please do not forget to click like, subscribe, and notifications for more gardening tips and content. I hope you have a great day in your garden. Bye.